Welcome to Owner Insights, the podcast that uncovers stories about businesses and their owners. I'm James Orchard, Managing Director of the Crew Harris Orchard. In each episode, I sit down with a business owner to hear their stories. We discuss things like why they started their business, what was their motivation, the mistakes they've made, the lessons they've learned, keys to growth, and what they do differently. These aren't how-to guides or do-as-I-say tips, just real conversations between two business people. Join us as we explore what it takes to become a truly great business. Ben Lumbers, welcome to Owner Insights. It's great to have you. Today we're going to talk about Gliderol Garage Doors, which at its height was one of SA's probably best known brands. Somehow you managed to change the name of Glenelg Oval to Gliderol Stadium.
Indeed. Which
we might talk about. But it was a very, very well-known business, and it's got a fascinating story. So maybe to give a little bit of context, if we start with at its height, perhaps what year that was, how many people you employed, roughly what the turnover was, what the geographical spread was, and then we'll go back to where it all began.
Probably the peak for Gliderol was around 2010, 11, where at that stage we were, in Australia, we were probably doing over 70 million and worldwide over 100 million. So we were in 20 different countries, either as a licensee situation or our own manufacturing plants, predominantly the UK, New Zealand and South Africa. And with that all together, I think we were just under 500 people during that time.
Right. So, but it was being run out of Holden Hill?
Correct.
Yep. And there was never any idea of moving the head office somewhere else?
No, we found with South Australia, the ability with South Australia was that we were able to get good people here.
Yep.
And so you've got your management team, and with that enabled the business to have a very stable office area. And then it's a matter of then getting good people in the States and different countries. And that often meant sending someone from South Australia if we wanted to get the culture through to the branch. You know, we did that with Sydney with our national marketing manager, and he went up there for 4 or 5 years. And we did that with the UK as well, with different directors, including myself. And the reality was we were also selling in Western Australia. And so I'm not sure if you know the Western Australians, but some, but they don't necessarily like the Eastern Seaboard, but they tolerate the South Australians. So it became a very
interesting dynamic.
Yeah, we were a bit like Switzerland, you know, and so that worked quite well for us. And it also meant that our two competitors were very Eastern Seaboard centric type companies. So it enabled us to do well in South Australia and also then just push into the Eastern Seaboard.
So you're sort of touching on the culture of the business, and I want to come back to that because I think it's what you developed was a really interesting culture and the way you went about employing your people. Perhaps that's a good segue to talk about your dad, Warwick.
Yes.
And the 70s. So let's go back to the start of Gliderol, and if you could just talk a little bit about Warwick, the sort of personality that he was, and his willingness to take the risks that he did back then.
Well, Dad, you know, he grew up not very much. You know, he had his mother, my grandmother, her husband left at the war, didn't actually get injured during the war, but he did leave and never came back. So, yeah, I know. That's a story for another time. But Dad was therefore, you know, it was pretty hard for them. They lived down at Glenelg and with his auntie Joan. And so he grew up with a very good group of mates down at the Bay, and they were quite notorious and infamous down there, but they had a great time, played sport.
Some of them still drink at the Bay Hotel Motel.
Some of them are definitely still
every
drinking.
Friday.
Absolutely. And if they're not there, they're at the Glenelg Golf Club playing and having a drink there. He did time as car salesman, had his own company called Skipping Girl Motors until his nephew, who was working there, accidentally wrote off one of the cars, and you know that was the end of Skipping Girl Motors. And then he was working for Ella's, and from there he went and worked for Wormald. And Wormald was a very large multinational company, and they had a company called Bangor Door Division, and that was Dad's role. He was the sales manager of the Bangor Garage Door Division, and they very small operation here in South Australia. And Wormwood then decided they bought B&D, which were the largest garage door manufacturer.
So this is mid to late 70s?
Early 70s,
Okay.
Yep. And so Dad saw an opportunity. They decided they were going to sell the assets of Bangor. Now, you've got to remember that Dad still had no money.
Yep.
And so that meant, he had to scrounge around because he needed to buy this equipment. And literally I think my nan had put a mortgage on her house to get him the money. They scraped as much as we could. And then he took in two partners, Danny and John Bone. And literally that was the beginning so that was in late 73. They bought the equipment and they were started in 74.
Were roller doors invented at this point?
They'd just been recently invented by B&D, the company that Wormwood bought, and that's part of the reason they did buy it. So up until then, garage doors was a very old technology. It was a tilt up and over door, which never worked very well and had a lot of limitations. So the roller door was actually commercialised in Australia by the company I meant, B&D, Byrne & Davis. And then from there, Bangor or then Gliderol became the second. The difference with Gliderol was we had an orbital motor that my father and an engineer named Milan Perisic worked upon, and it was unique. Back then, you had to pay sales tax on building products, which is no longer around anymore. But because the motor was part of the door and the door was part of the house, you were exempt. And so it gave him a commercial advantage in Australia. South Australia was still he had all the contacts that he'd been selling with Bangor. So he started selling with new builders here in South Australia. And it was a time when the building industry was taking off.
Can I just ask about the door? Because it sounds like he's gone and bought the equipment from B&D for the old tilt-up, but then developed a rather unique
motorisation.
So the motorisation and the roller door was really is it too much to say that was Warwick?
The motor was definitely Warwick. The roller door had been started with the other company as well. So B&D brake press their doors, which is limited in how quickly you can produce a door, and we use roll forming. And that was the difference, and that's what Dad brought to the thing from his time at Bangor and Wormwood. He learnt to bring that, and that made it a lot easier to make a door and make a door of any size in Australia, and that gave us a competitive advantage for a long time.
Gliderol doors, obviously where the name came from, that was quite unique. So anything new is always a risk, but somehow it took off.
Yes. And
so it did very well in South Australia. And then he thought, okay, well, we might try this in Melbourne and Sydney.
What you've got to realise, as I mentioned, the other companies were very Eastern Seaboard centric. So what happened was they had dealerships over there, and those dealers could either buy their other door or couldn't get any doors at the right price. So we contacted those, and they became our major dealers in the state. And we used to, every door was made in South Australia, and we would send every door on trucks to the different states on a weekly basis. So we were making, tens of thousands of doors in South Australia and shipping them all around the country. Now, the only thing is with doors is they don't ship that well. Back then you could load them in certain ways. So you could get 100 doors on a truck. But eventually over time, we had demand in the States, we needed to start manufacturing in the States because you couldn't get as many doors on the trucks as you used to because the rules of transport and safety changed all that.
Okay, so things are going well in SA. We go to Melbourne, we go to Sydney, go to Brisbane, get back to the mates who were running those divisions. Where's the working capital coming from? So is it just reinvesting the profits to try and grow the thing? Because then you go to the States. I mean, that's a big call. And so just how did the funding?
Well, that was always our difficulty because obviously when you start a business with $20,000, that's what they started with.
Yeah.
You're undercapitalised from day one. But yes, they did reinvest. You do deals with different dealers and situations. So cash up front, the truck leaves before. So that helps with your cash flow. And you have one major supplier, which is Blue Scope Steel. And they would give you what they would call 45 days. It's actually 15 days in anyone else's terms, but
Yep, so how's that
So
work?
it's 15 days from the end of the month that you could receive the steel any time during that month.
Right.
So
if you make an order on the 29th, they make you pay on the 15th and call it 45 days.
Correct.
Right. Shout out to BlueScope.
Yep. And buy shares in BlueScope because and they do it to everyone. There's no other terms.
Yeah.
So with that, it still was better cash flow than, if he was getting cash for the doors. So he was always reinvesting in that aspect. But then, as I mentioned, the export side came upon, firstly with the Middle East.
So this is mid-80s by now?
Early mid-80s. So first one was Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
So then Dad would, and he was, as I said, passionate about it. So he would sell the whole licensing concept. Become a licensee of Gliderol in Singapore. We will sell you the technology to build the doors and we'll sell you the operators from us directly. And that's where a lot of the early cash flow came from.
Okay, so Gliderol Adelaide didn't own Gliderol Singapore. It licensed.
They were a licensee.
Right.
So we had, of the 20 we had 3 or 4 were actually owned by us, which was New Zealand, UK, South Africa.
And so the difference is you have to fund the ones you own, whereas the licensees, they fund that themselves.
Correct.
Okay.
And you're talking about letters of credit, which you can bank. You're talking about cash up front, so that, again, and the margins were good. And Dad loved the export side of it. He much preferred that than the day-to-day. He was one of the first into the Middle East. I mean, he used to tell that story and it was quite hysterical. But, after 3 days of waiting in a hotel for this gentleman, he finally turned up, in the middle of a desert and literally did the deal there with a piece of paper and that.
That's a really interesting situation where you're dealing with someone from a totally different culture, writing stuff down on a napkin and making an agreement. Let's talk about the culture that Warwick grew. In particular, there was a trend in the business where mates of Warwick had really important roles, and more than a couple. There were like mates everywhere, all over the world. That's extraordinary because it obviously worked.
Very much so. But as I suppose as we started this, and I said Dad, down at Glenelg with all his mates, and he was very loyal to those because they helped him out a lot. To the point where they'd lend him shoes. I think they lent him his shoes for his wedding with my mother. So, we're talking, there was a loyalty there with those people. And so Dad would love to, do the work, have a chat, and he could be quite, he could yell quite a lot if he wanted, if it didn't go thing. But at the end of the day, they'd all, be friends again.
So he had a gift with people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He was a great storyteller and very good at, he could make you laugh. And that worked well with the way it worked. And differing branches, he was able to put people into different places. I mean, when I went to Melbourne, his good friend Barry Walton, who was, he came over and assisted me there. And when I left UK, then we had Laurie Hoskins.
So before we get on to those people, just tell us about the Gliderol Bus and its role in the culture of the business.
So the Gliderol Bus, again, is Dad did enjoy, he loved footy and he loved the social side of what Gliderol offered. So, from a very early time, and you got to remember back in the 80s, lunch was still tax deductible.
Pre-85.
Pre-85, I know. So they loved that time. I mean, my God, the Edinburgh hotel, they'd all be trying to pay the bill. So it just continued from there. So the bus came out of that kind of process. First of all, it was, promote the brand, but to drive the guys from lunch to lunch around in the 80s.
Yeah, and it wasn't a minibus. It was a big SDA bus.
Well, the first 3 were SDA buses.
Yeah.
And so typical back then, the SDA made buses that were not allowed to be driven on the roads in South Australia by anyone other than the SDA.
Right.
So that means they could only sell them for like $1,000 because you had to basically engineer the whole bus again and thin it down.
Yeah.
Now, because we had a manufacturing division,
you can do that.
Half of our division was working on the bus while we were working on doors. So 3 buses through, and then they used to the biggest time they'd have on that bus was, other than the footy, and remember Westlake's a long way away, so it was very handy. But it was also the AFL Grand Final.
Yeah.
So every year we would take 100 guests and friends, and so to the Grand Final. Yeah, and so I was a Victorian manager at that time, and my role was to deal with the 100 tickets and get the hotel accommodation. And then you've got to realise, you know, a lot of these guys, there'd be 12 to 15 on the bus, and they would leave at 7 in the morning, and I would help them off.
They would drink all day.
All day, play cards all day.
Yeah.
They'd have a barbecue, probably Keith, something like that.
Yeah.
And then just power into Melbourne.
Yeah.
And but that was what he loved about it. You know, that was his. As I said, it's kind of, he loved the footy. It was actually really good for our dealers as well, because we would fly 40 or 50 of them in and put them all up. But it also was, again, another way of kind of saying thanks, you know, for everything that happened in the past.
So at its raw form, a roller door's not that exciting, but
definitely not.
Warwick was able.
That's my wife.
So Warwick was able to grow a culture that people wanted to be around, and that obviously had a lot to do with the success of the business. Let's talk about you. How and why did you get involved in the business? So you must have finished school mid-80s.
I did, and then finished uni 88. I studied economics, and like all kids that grew up in the 80s, I was going to be a merchant banker. Or
you'd watch Wall Street?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was going to be that guy, and I was heading off to London.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I realised very quickly when I finished uni, and not one of the banks, not one of anyone turned up to the interview process, because we were in the recession that we had to have.
So this would be after the 87 crash.
Yeah. So 87 crash happened, but the real knock-on was 88, 89 in the manufacturing and the building industry, because that took a while to come out of the commercial sector. Yeah. So I remember I'm going to have to get a job in some way, shape or form. So I started working at Gliderol in Adelaide, and they put me in the auditing department. I don't know if that was a test or punishment. Anyway, which is where I went, and I thought, I'll go back and do accounting then. You know, if I'm going to be here, you know, let's have something else that I can add. Economics is one of those things, you know, that
I know the difference.
Yes, I know you do. That's right. You know, I only worked in the 80s. During that time in the 90s, Dad, we had a dealer in Melbourne, and they'd put an offer to buy the business, and I, you know, wasn't enjoying Adelaide, because basically it was the Warwick Lumbers show. No decision could be made without, you know, Dad's okay, and, you know.
Typical SME business.
Yes, exactly. And you've got to realise that most of the times during the day they were off on that bus. So, you know. Having lunch. Correct. Yeah. And so many decisions that I thought kind of needed to be made about, you know, the next brochure and the thing, because I'm young and I, you know. So you're early 20s by now. Yeah. Okay, but obviously intimately involved in the high level decision making already. Yes. You try to be, but, you know, at that stage there wasn't a role as such that I could do, but I just got involved. Because you were the boss's son. Correct. Right. Now, that didn't work very well. Let me assure you. You don't want to be through the chain of command from someone off the factory, because Dad didn't like that. It had to go that way without that. So I then realised, well, I think I'll go to Melbourne. You know, this opportunity presented. And Dad was good in a way, I suppose. In one way, there wasn't anything to lose, because Melbourne was really struggling at that stage. It had done well, but had gone down due to some management issues and some recession issues. So I got to Melbourne in 1990, and which was great for me, because I learnt, one, to find a new plant or a new factory, and that was, you know, an amazing and a depressing time. I remember turning up in Dandenong and all these empty cul-de-sacs and cars everywhere, and guys sleeping in these cars, and that was all the reps from the commercial businesses. Kidding. And this was before they laid everyone off in 1991. And it's something, well, we can talk about later, but, you know, it's something that they don't realise can happen again. Yeah. Anyway, so from there I learned to, you know, acquire a factory, put in systems, put in my own IT system, you know, get production going. And then I got married, and we lived there. My wife and I lived there till 95. And so I had 5 really good years in Melbourne, and the business grew from, I think when I got there, we were just doing about only 150 doors, and when we left we were doing 1,100. Wow. So garage doors. Going to Melbourne for you sounds like an opportunity for some autonomy away from Dad, who liked the command and control style. And you're able to actually be quite successful going from 150 to 1,100. That's a big growth in the business. So that must have given you a lot of confidence as well. It did. And I mean, that was, you know, I learnt more about garage doors in that 5 years than I would have ever learnt in Adelaide. I think what I learned over there was you've got to realise roller doors huge and we've been growing for 15, 20, 25 years. But there was a new product coming through, which was the sectional door, the one in panels with the squares on it.
Yep.
Totally different technology. Out of America was the technology.
Becomes a threat.
It is a threat, exactly.
Yeah.
And Dad was so passionate still about the roller door. And in South Australia, you probably couldn't see that because over here they were still expensive. There was no local player.
Yeah.
But over there I could see potential. So with that, and after a lot of discussions and persuasions and things, we came to the point that he agreed that we needed to build a machine. And we started that process in 97, 8, and then put a new plant line in, and we put that in Sydney. Yeah. And that was the other thing I did, was just, I think, to get across that the Eastern Seaboard is a very important part of the country, because you've got to realise, and I understand why, for Gliderol, we had all this great export.
Yeah.
South Australia was booming.
Yeah.
So it didn't always make sense to go to the Eastern Seaboard because, it's a lot of work and a lot of hard work. But to make the better or more rounded business, I think it worked well.
Well, they're just much bigger markets.
Yeah.
I mean, as great as Adelaide is, it's just a much bigger market, and if you can tap into it, you can do very well.
But also, the other good thing about it is if one state's doing poorly, you make it up in the other, and that's what you really want to broaden your risk. Yeah. Otherwise, you've got 2 eggs in the basket.
Yeah.
This way we were able to, and that worked. We were almost, I always said to Dad and the other, we're counter-cyclical.
Yeah.
When the commercial part of the business was doing well, we'd be doing thriving in the other, or the export, which always enabled us to get through the really tough times.
Yeah. So why'd you go to the UK?
So
you leave Melbourne, go straight to the UK?
I do. Yeah. So in '96, we wanted to go back eventually to Adelaide, start a family and all that. But I felt I needed to know more if I was going to go back, and I was going to go back as the general manager or managing director.
So by this time you're 27, 28?
Yeah, still pretty young.
Yeah,
but, I thought, well, I need to know, and it was going to be a good experience. So we went over there, and I'd also knew that we'd been in the UK now for 10, 15 years. We're selling a lot, but we're not making a lot of money.
Right.
Making some money, but not a lot of money.
But how does that work? You own a business in Sydney that makes money. You own a business in the UK that doesn't. Why is that?
Well, you've got to hope that it's, starting curve, you're learning, so you're buying market share, so you're not getting the margins that you hope.
Okay.
Reality was, though, after 10 or 15 years, that shouldn't be the case.
And
it wasn't. So unfortunately, when I arrived, I realised very quickly, I suppose there was a lack of technical knowledge in the business. Everyone knew how to sell, but no one knew a lot about the product except for 2 gentlemen in the factory.
Yeah. So how many people are you working with in the UK?
There's about 60.
Okay.
But there's 2 guys, Charlie and George Best.
Yeah.
One's the factory guy, and the other
one's the soccer player.
Unfortunately, neither the soccer player. So you've got these 2 people, and one is the manufacturing manager and one is the dispatch manager. Well, they've got basically the keys to the business. So very quickly, I got there and I said, they said, Charlie and George are the best people in the world. And I said, oh, really? I said, well, how much do we pay them? And they said, it's under £4 an hour. I said, so what, we pay £75 a week. And they work how many hours? 80 or 90 hours. I said, look, guys, I don't mean to be rude, but no person will do that.
Yeah.
They've got to be taking advantage of something. And very quickly we realised that not only were they taking advantage, they had a second shift going that we didn't know about.
Right.
A night shift.
Yes.
Because they had the keys to the house.
Yes.
So we needed to, and that was, and Dad knew that, and that's why, he agreed to go there. I was very systems driven, being able to have set up the one in Melbourne. So I got the systems, got all the stock away, the inventory away. And with that, we
got rid of those 2.
They went the next day. They never came back.
Yeah. Great blokes, though.
Great blokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they were good fellas. And so from that day onwards, we didn't start selling a lot more. My focus was on just getting the business to run better. But it just dropped to the bottom line.
Yeah.
And it became very profitable.
Yeah.
With that being said, I did renegotiate with my father on the excessive price he was charging for the automatic operators from Australia to the UK.
Oh, okay. Right.
Because he was Gliderol was getting it here, though.
Yeah.
And that's another reason when you say, why is the margin not?
Oh, okay. There's a few management fees going between
well,
head office and the others.
It's just he was selling at the price he was selling to the Middle East at, which was a great price, high profit.
Yeah.
But as I said to him, that's not a really competitive price to us.
Yeah.
You know, and he didn't have to because he had a kind of a bit of a monopoly on it at that stage.
So you go to the UK, then you come back a couple of years later once the UK is all under control. Laurie Hoskins takes over, keeps it all going.
Yep.
Then let's take it to 2011.
Yes.
When an opportunity comes to sell.
Yes.
Talk us through that. Why 2011? So by this time you're 40?
Yes. Yeah,
ish.
Just under.
Bit young to retire.
Very much. Look, it wasn't my decision. Look, Dad had poor health for a couple of years. He'd been diagnosed at one stage, misdiagnosed with terminal cancer, but actually during that time was actually unwell and getting another form of cancer. So he was a bit, I suppose, fatigued with the whole situation. And so a public company came to us and presented a very strong offer to buy the business. But I have to say at that time when that deal was happening, I was actually in the snow. And I remember finding out about it from my source going, things are happening. So when we came to the realisation, you've got two choices to make. You know, that is you either fight it all the way through or you go with it, and that's what I did. So I made sure the due diligence and the business was at its best so that whatever we were going to sell, we were going to get the best maximum dollar.
So does that mean that Warwick wanted to sell but you didn't really? But Warwick still held the whip hand. He still had the control.
With the family trust owned 51% of the business.
Yeah.
And he controlled the family trust.
Yeah.
It was totally his
But did
decision.
you want to, did the two of you have a conversation about that? Did you ever say to him, I don't want to sell?
Yes.
Yeah.
It didn't fall that way.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, as I said, it was his health wasn't good.
Right.
And so it was a difficult time. But look, as I said, at that point in time, you have to make a decision. You know, it's no point fighting it. I just had to go through and make sure we got top dollar for the thing.
Yeah.
So that was the process.
Yeah.
They wanted me to stay on and work for them, the new company.
Yeah. So the sale occurred.
Sale occurred.
Can you say how much you sold the business for?
It was 42 million. It was public.
So that's a great outcome from a business that started in the 70s.
Yeah, and you've got to realise Dad started with nothing, with 20 grand.
Yeah.
Sold it for that.
Yeah.
And pre-capital gains.
Yeah.
So it's all a win-win
Happy
situation.
days.
Happy days. And he's happy and the other shareholders are happy. And that's the other thing. There are other shareholders also wanting their thing of money. So
and those guys are in their 60s by then,
correct.
I guess. Yeah. So it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So they were all at that age where something had to be. None of their children were in the business. So you've got to understand.
So again, his mates were the other shareholders.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so you've got people pulling from different directions. And so, you know, you can look back and say maybe, I should have sat down more and try and mapped it out. But it is a private business, and that's not the kind of guy my father was. So we went through the process. He moved on. Unfortunately, his health did deteriorate quite quickly after the sale of the business, both actually, and John Bones as well. So he probably didn't get to enjoy as much as he did. Anyway, I moved on with the business.
So you stayed with the business?
I stayed with the business. But after 12 to 18 months, the market had changed considerably. Self-detached housing had deteriorated quite a bit, especially in Victoria.
But you're now effectively working for a public company.
Correct.
So how did you find working for a public company compared to doing your own thing?
You know, I remember I used to sometimes curse working for a private company because you can only argue with your father. But I found it a lot worse working for a public company. It's a totally different agenda. I mean, for me, because it was the family business, it was always what's best for the business. How do I save a dollar here? How do I do this better?
Well, it's your money.
Correct.
Yeah.
They don't think that way.
No, it's other people's money.
It's other people's money.
Yeah.
So, their view is, let's get, one of those consultants, Kingsley and whatever else, to come out and give us a new plan on how we're going to run this business. And I mean, seriously, I sat in 2 or 3 of these meetings and I was in shock to say, at the end of one of the meetings, one of the very highly paid consultants said, so what I can take out of this is 2 hours of workshopping.
Yeah.
The customer is always right. And I'm just there going, wow. I hope we haven't paid too much for that kind of scenario.
$1,000 an hour, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
more.
Very quickly, they didn't believe that the market was changing because they were building industries and they had a lot of high-rise products. So, I think in one of those buildings you'd sell 1,000 toilets, you'd sell 1 garage door. So they thought the market was still strong. So we basically agreed to disagree. And in the last, I think, general managers meeting, so we had a whole team of general managers that ran all the different business units. And then, I think we said to, the managing director, and I got, drawn over the coals at that point in time. And again, because I probably had only worked for a private business, I'd even arc up a bit because I wasn't a corporate player. And I just said, well, frankly, to the CEO, you're wrong in this aspect. I said, you're not seeing it that way from my, and it's hard to say from 25, 30 years experience. They don't want to hear that.
So what was the outcome though? Where was the business at, say, 2015? Sorry, 2011 you sold. Where was it at in
2013? We were definitely, sales were not meeting the numbers that we were supposed to.
Yeah.
We were still making good money, but not what we promised in the IM and not what they thought.
Yeah.
So the problem being is, one is they bought the business for the wrong reasons. They tried to integrate some product into our business, which was never going to work. That was the other problem. Yeah. And I told them that as well. I said that will never work. Yeah. And so we got to that point where, we had to do some restructuring, and I was on the restructuring team, and then there was another restructuring team that I wasn't on. Right. But when that's happening. I knew when it was happening because it was 2 or 3 months of people. And this is the other thing about public culture. They stop talking to you because they know there's people privy that know that you're gone. And it is like dead man walking. And so I knew, and I remember I went out to dinner with a good friend one of my friends who worked in the business. And we'd going to see a comedian, went out to Japanese, and I said to him, look, they're coming down Monday, and I'm pretty sure I'm gone. Now, the problem is for you is that you will be gone 2 weeks afterwards. No. And God bless him, but I knew that role wasn't required. And it happened all that way. But it could have been a simple conversation. Instead they had to do it the public company way, where you've got to leave the office at that point in time, which by the way was my building. So I was quite annoyed. But
so take us to 2015. So you're gone.
I'm gone. So obviously, as you alluded to, I'm probably a little bit early to retire. Yeah. So myself and Nick Storen and Mark Dooley. Now Nick had worked for me for years in Gliderol, and then went out to do his own thing. Decided that these guys were probably not doing a good job, and we might start again. And with my contacts,
I start up in competition.
Yeah. So with my contacts, I happen to have 6 containers of garage door machinery sitting down in a.
It's funny.
Yeah, I know. Well, someone shut a factory down in America, and I bought it. Okay. So thought I might need it sometime. Yeah. Anyway, that started the process, and that was how I suppose the shareholding came about for that, because that was going to be our business. It was called Reliance Doors, and we were going to be an alternative supplier. Yeah. During that process, as we were getting all the equipment ready and doing all that, we found out Gliderol was for sale. And so we got the information memorandum, and seriously, I could not believe how it deteriorated in 18 months. I mean, it was losing.
So this is the same business that you sold in 2011, is now on the market in 2015.
Correct. Right. So, 12 to 18 months after I'd left.
So you get the IM.
Yep.
You can see how much it's making or
how much it's losing. And it never, and this is a business that never lost money in its entire history. Yeah.
So this public company has managed to take a winner and turn it into a loser in 4 years.
Yep.
That trick.
Yeah. And so, and it was confronting, because when you look at it, and and I know how to read everything financially for that business. But they'd changed so much on how they reported it all. But we had to take a risk because, as I said to the guys, I said, look, I know how to make this business make money. And the further we get in there, the more chance we'll understand why. And so we came up to what we thought was a value that it was worth, because I knew just alone what the equipment was worth. You know, we'd spent tens of millions of dollars before we sold the business. So we went through that process and we put our offer in. The guys, and we had a really good advisor working with us who'd done other business deals with us, Mark Martulli from E&A, and he was working on the deal. I had to stay behind the scenes because I was Mr. X, because I was just running out of my workouts process. And then, you know, they came and they tried to be funny and, you know, then they, you know, did something. And so Mark just said, bugger it, we're walking away.
So sorry. Can you say what value you came up with?
Well, we first came out with 12 million was our go-in price.
That's so you thought that was roughly the value of the plant and equipment?
Yeah.
So you're not paying for any goodwill? Okay.
No,
so you've sold this thing for 42.
It's losing 7 million a year.
Right.
Yeah, 7 million a year.
You've sold this thing for 42 in 2011. By 2015, it's losing money and you're putting a $12 million valuation on it. Okay. So VARS says...
Well, then they mucked around and they played around. So he said, that's it, we're away. We're walking away. We're at 7.
Yeah. 7.
He just took 5 off and said, we're at 7.
Right. Just randomly came up with 7?
Just randomly. Because I think he was so annoyed with them, and we were all annoyed with him. I was away overseas at the stage, and I remember walking around everywhere on the phone the whole time. And so we thought we had it. We thought we didn't have it. We thought we had it. And then they came back, and the critical thing, and this was, I suppose, one of the telling points of public companies, they'd told the market they were going to dispose of the business prior to the end of financial year.
Right.
So the other person, the overbidder that they were trying to hit us off against, couldn't do the deal in that time frame because they had to go to the ACCC. And we didn't have to. So lo and behold, they accept the 7 and we get the business. And we couldn't believe we'd get the, I mean, you've got an excess of debtors of $7 million in the business.
Yeah. So you've got the cash there to pay for the 7 straight up. So sold it in 2011 for 42, bought it back in 2015 for 7, which was funded by your debtors probably.
Yeah, we did put a little bit. We'd already put a bit of cash into the Reliance business for the machinery and setting all that up. So that was the basic infrastructure. And then that business put in the but there wasn't a lot.
Wow.
Because you've got to realise people like the NAB, they just give you an instant finance facility on your debtor book. Which worked beautifully. And we'd paid it, and then one of our competitors came to us. So I suppose when we got into the business and looked at it, we saw very quickly that they had made a major mistake in Western Australia, which wasn't open when I'd left. We were just starting through the process. And so when they set their costing base, they had misread the cost base and basically was selling every door below cost in Western Australia. So it made... So when they talked in this IM, they kept saying, we're selling more doors, but our losses are increasing. I mean...
So, Ben, you make it sound so simple. You've got the business now. How did you fix it? What were the major things that you did to turn around a business which was once a great business into now not a very good business at all? Now you've got it. You've got to turn it around.
Yeah. Well... very quickly, the best part about it all, and I think was a reflection of the culture of the business, was you've got to realise when I went, 20 or 30 Gliderol staff went, and
your mates
staff.
went.
Some were not mates. You know, my CFO went, Thingo, and she was great. And so I basically did a ring around, and I said, we're getting the band back together. Who wants to come back? So I got IT, my purchasing, my CFO, and then she got all key people underneath her back over time. So very quickly, the best thing we were able to do, I remember them saying, we're going to pay 6 months IT is included in the deal. And then after that, we had to pay them, $100,000 a month for their IT, which was a ridiculous price anyway.
Yeah.
We were cut over within 90 days to our own IT system, which was better than their system anyway, and running and independent. And so it was just, that made it easy. Because I didn't have to focus on little things like that. I had good people to do all that, and our goal myself, Nick and Mark, was really just to get the clients back.
Mm.
We got rid of the Western Australian operations. Fortunately, our competitor bought the plant and equipment off us, bought us out of the 20-year lease that they'd signed us into.
Perfect.
And so all of a sudden, I think we made money in the third month.
Wow.
So it wasn't, and that was the other thing. So when we did the staffing, so you do the full budget, the model, everything before you buy the business. You know, okay, this is where we're going to be. This is how long we're going to track and lose money for, and all very thorough. Western Australia, we get there, and then what we allowed for like 25 people that we were going to have to make redundant, well, unbeknown to us, they were all recruitment hire. So all we had to do was ring and say just...
so there's no leave entitlements or anything?
Nothing. There was no redundancies required. We just said, don't turn up, please.
It's a bonus.
It was absolutely, and that was the other problem as well. They had so many, they weren't allowed to put FTEs on, full-time employees.
Yeah.
You know, that was the CEO had said, no FTEs. Of course, you still can do labour hire. So what does every general manager do? They go and put 30 labour hire people on, paying an extra 30, 40% on top of.
Yeah.
And then they don't understand why the margin doesn't drop through. So, I mean, I know I'm sounding like it was easy. It wasn't easy at all, but...
But you discovered these things, more and more things as you went.
Yeah. I didn't think it would be not as easy, but I didn't think it would be some really glaringly obvious things.
But you had a sneaking suspicion something wasn't right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so you took the risk to buy it back. Yeah. And then as you got into it, you started to discover all the things that were wrong with it.
Things exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and they were, big branch things. They had a call centre in Melbourne for the whole of Australia, and there were like 16 staff there that knew absolutely nothing about garage doors. Now, the problem with that is they can take an order, but they can't answer a question. And so that was the biggest frustration.
One-dimensional customer service.
Correct. Yeah. And they'd sit there and they had this massive TV with all these calls and look, they go, we're doing really well, aren't we? And I said, well, not really, because every client's telling me they can't get an answer out of you guys. Yeah. So, again, we closed that down very quickly, just brought the people back to each state to give you the phone call and the face there. Because at the end of the day, if you ring and ask something, you want an answer. So that person can walk up to the operations man in Sydney and say, when is their door coming, or something to that effect. It's just that personal touch and that was always probably the thing with Gliderol, because it was a family thing.
So was that something that went missing during the public company ownership era? Was the basics of customer service?
Correct.
Yeah.
Because someone, probably one of those Kingsley advisors, suggested a call centre would be the way to go.
Cheap option.
Yeah, well, cheap option, and you get a streamlined and a common response to the customer, but it doesn't work that way. And state by state is very, they're very set in their own way. So you're better off having a Queenslander answering a Queenslander's question. They're happier the way it goes, and Sydney is a similar thing. So, we have different views on how it goes, and it doesn't mean one's right, one's wrong, but you've got to, I think, really justify the reasons behind why you make a decision. And that, I think I've alluded to before, PowerPoint's a wonderful tool to make everything look good on paper. But reality is it covers, some plans that are really not suited to certain businesses.
So it sounds like you're not really the sort of business leader who's massively into strategic plans. You're more into day-to-day getting things right.
I think no, when we came back in 2015, we were much more strategic.
Yeah.
Because Nick and Mark, as partners, were very much more involved. They wanted to be more and more involved with Gliderol. So we'd have, I thought we had too many board meetings. We had 12 board meetings a year. I mean, and we'd do strategic plans.
So did you have external directors and all that?
Yeah, we did. And our chairman was external. And so, and Vartuli Mark was on our board as well. And you do need that, because we were also, we acquired other businesses and we were looking for opportunities. So it wasn't, and I prefer to have some input. I mean, I realised probably at that time I was more like my father than I thought I was, because I didn't like all the input. Yeah. But the reality is, it does help. And I think, if we look back at it now, if we had more strategic planning back in 2011, we probably would have never sold the business. Probably might have gone and acquired more businesses. But, that's hindsight, but now, look,
but you had your Kerry Packer Allen Bond moment, selling for 42, buying back for 7.
And so when the boys came to me in 1920, Mark had been in the industry as long as myself, but a lot of the time on the tools and right at the coalface, dealing with every customer's need. He was tired. He wanted out of not only share of our business, but his businesses. So, we went through the process under the shareholders agreement to buy out, but there was always someone else if they could get a better deal across the line, you'd have to accept it. So we bundled it all together and it ended up going to a Swiss-German multinational.
So hang on.
You got Gliderol.
Yep.
And then their businesses off to the side. So they bought three businesses.
Okay, right.
And each had an agreed value within the group,
right,
as such.
Right.
So.
But you held on to the remainder of Gliderol. Okay, so you've taken over. You've done a bit of restructuring. You've got back to the basics. Got rid of the call centres. Concentrated on the customers. Yep. Got a board to give you a bit of feedback, some of which you took. Yeah. Tell us about 2020.
So 2020, as I said, we got to that point. We were, and I think even myself, I workshopped it with my children at that stage. They were studying law, commerce, law, finance.
So you got adult children by this time.
Yep. And so they were not really showing any interest. And then your decision is, okay, if I could buy them out, and knowing what the counter offer is, it was going to be a huge amount of debt to take on for me. Yeah. To carry the business, possibly for them to come into the business. Yeah. So, and the deal, as the process went on, once we agreed to go through the sale process, got better and better. So we got to a point where the deal was, I thought, all too good. And
so you put it to the market in 2020? Okay.
Yeah. And it was an interesting process going through the thing. We had 2 internationals and 1 domestic, which we would have thought the domestic was going to be the winner.
And by this time, is the business making more money than it was back in 2011?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're hoping for a bigger number than 42?
Yeah. Yeah, we are. But that being said, we didn't, our turnover was not much. It was very similar to the number back then, but we're making a little bit more money, stronger money. So, and the business was far more.
Well, you'd probably learned a bit.
Absolutely.
Between then and 2020 about how to run
and
the business.
You've got to remember, private businesses don't always run as efficiently as they were on the bottom line because you want things in the business. So, you may have extra people so that they can do other things. So, it's a different scenario. So we made sure that, it was ready and for sale. We had all the financial data. I felt a bit sorry for all the people I'd brought back, but at the same time, they were all 64, 5 themselves. I mean, my IT manager was 71.
Yeah, right.
And so he wanted to retire anyway. So it was, I didn't feel, I felt everyone was going to be looked after. And part of the deal was in 2020, they wanted us to stay on, the people who bought us. Swiss-German company called Dormakaba. And they wanted us to stay on for 2 years minimum. Right. And triggered a bit of earn-out on that as well, which was important because obviously when they took over, we went straight into COVID. Yeah. So it's very hard when you've got these graphs going like that to say, why didn't you make the numbers this month? You say, well, New South Wales was shut for the month.
Yeah, good excuse. But good time to sell, bad time to have an earn-out.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And that was not too concerning because for me, I thought the upfront was better than anything that had been offered by anyone else. Yeah. Just the upfront figure. Yeah. The earn-out was, a really nice sweetener. So But the good thing was,
but you got the earn-out anyway.
We got the earn-out. Yeah. So and it was important for us to prove it because I didn't want it to look like, and I didn't want it to be like with GWA when the market went south. I didn't want it to be the same where they'd think it's us. The reality is we were managed because as you know, after COVID everything went like that. So we got all the numbers and then some because we had to make up for the previous year's miss, and we did that and over. So it was really good. Mark Dooley, he went straight away as soon as his day was up. And I thought I'd stay on for a while because they actually were are a good company to work for. Okay. And the CEO was actually based in Adelaide. Right. So that was a positive, and I got along well with him.
So was the CEO a Swiss-German guy?
No, he's Australian. Yeah. And so we were part of their door division. So he was in charge of that. The actual CEO of Australasia was based in Melbourne. Right. Anyway, that worked very well. But I got to a point where, their international IT international IH&S
Yeah.
are starting to take over. And so you're not...
Here comes the red tape.
Yeah. And I didn't really want to, at the end of the day, you're an employee then. It's not the same.
No.
So
why is it not the same? Just extrapolate on that.
Well, if you've been given $3 million of CapEx to spend for the year, they expect you to spend the $3 million CapEx, and I don't.
Yeah.
I'll spend it if I need it.
Yeah.
So,
So you've still got the small business or medium business
correct.
Mentality.
I mean, when I left, I think they had 6 utes out the back, brand new,
Yeah.
because they had to do it, but they couldn't get the people.
Yeah.
So why buy the ute? But you had to buy the ute, because if you didn't buy the ute, the Germans would take it away from you. This is not unique to them. I've realised this is
corporate.
This is corporate, and it is different, and it works in a corporate environment. It just doesn't work for us.
So we've skipped over something pretty important here, and that is that in 9 years we've gone 42, buy back for 7, and sell it for a hell of a lot more than 42.
Yes.
So that's a pretty good outcome, and your kids are happy.
Kids are happy.
They're off doing their own thing anyway.
Yep.
So it's just an incredible story. So you do finish up as an employee because, after 30 years of not being an employee or not feeling like an employee. Yep. So what are you doing now?
Well, for a while I was doing some consulting with them because they're doing some machinery stuff. So I do a little bit with them, but just not a lot. Mainly investment in commercial property, and in the markets. It's one of those things when you're working in the business, you're investing all your time in the business, and that's where the money gets generated. So once you bring the money out, you've actually then got to become an active investor with your money, unless you don't like doing that, but I do. So, we've got the commercial properties, we're doing some residential properties, which I enjoy because I enjoy it's not easy to do at the moment because building, but, I enjoy that side of it. And then, there's other investments that we do for small businesses. So we do, I've got a syndicate that we, do, startup loans for businesses or equity investments. What I have learned from that part of the business is the runway is always very long on those equity businesses. But, there might be an opportunity out there. But I'm enjoying it. I'm probably busier now in my day-to-day work than I was in the latter stages of Gliderol, because once we'd sold on to the public company, and that it was far more corporate role that I was doing than it was my normal hands-on self.
So a couple of years out now, having a good look at other things, from an investment perspective, what are your reflections on your 30 years being influential and running a small, medium-sized enterprise? How hard is it? Has it got harder, do you think, over the years? Because the reason for the question is, my understanding is that this nation, the prosperity of Australia is largely off the back of small, medium-sized businesses. And you've got a great story. You've seen something that's really worked. It's really important for the nation that we have businesses like Gliderol continue to prosper. That's a really long-winded way of asking you a question. But what are your reflections of being a small business owner now that you've been out of it for a couple of years? I mean,
I have to say it is definitely becoming more difficult as a small to medium business. I mean, everyone will whinge about the red tape that comes up, but, if you look at the current situation now, it's becoming almost prohibitive to employ people which is what small to medium businesses do well.
And even if you want to employ them, it's really hard to find them.
It's impossible to find them. And so therefore you're paying, I mean, I know at certain stages in the latter years where, you're paying $100,000 for a storeman in Western Australia and things like that. But, the biggest issue, I think, and this is more out of a manufacturing background and a construction background, I think where the government state and federal have let us down, not let us down, just where they've missed a mark and an opportunity, was we all got caught up, and we're all guilty of it, of saying all our kids have got to go and do finance, legal, law. I want you to be a professional. Well, I can tell you, I know what my kids are being paid, and I'm sure, It goes up in an exponential way. But the reality is we should have been investing in trades, skills. You know, and as you said, you can't get a lot of these people. One, they don't have skills. Two, a lot don't have the work ethic that the trade would have given them to do this. And so what happens is we're paying, you know, $100 for someone to cut your tree, or we're doing this, or we can't build the houses that the government promises us. You know, that figure that they pull out every so often that we're going to do by 2030, it's not going to happen. You cannot build that many houses. I think the best was Melbourne, 40,000. But we don't have the skills or the people to do that anymore. And I think with small to medium businesses, I remember when in the early days, you used to be able to go to TAFE and you'd get a subsidy for that person. You'd put them in the welding bay, they'd learn, and you had someone for life. Doesn't happen anymore. You know, whether, you know, they let TAFE suffer, they then dropped the subsidy, then they brought the subsidy back, but the subsidy was no good because you couldn't find someone out of TAFE to do the role. And so we've missed an opportunity, and I think that's going to show up more so in the next few years, because I don't ever want it to be that time where I said with the car sitting in the cul-de-sacs and all the people in the car until their jobs disappear. But we are now sitting in a situation where we've got probably 40-50% working in the public service. That's not productive for them.
Well, it's not building anything, is it?
Exactly. And we need to be able to do that. And I think, you know, if we don't get me wrong, there's certain things we shouldn't build. They should be built offshore. But there's other things that we're very good at that we've let go by the wayside. And that's probably the saddest thing I've seen. But, you know, hopefully there's, you know, we're a smart country, so I think there's opportunities for there to do it. But there's a lot more, I think, and it needs to be a long-term plan. This is the other thing which is very hard to deal with at the moment is, you know, every set of politicians flip-flop over every 2 to 3 years in a different path on what's going to be. And
everything's very short-term.
Correct. And the internet has a lot to do with that because they see that. But the reality is, you know, this should have started 10, 15 years ago. Everyone agrees we need more trades and TAFE, but they make it an intellectual issue rather than let's actually sit down, get this happening.
Work out how to do it. And we can do that. So a related question, it's a very, very good observation. I don't think you get many arguments with that. Being Adelaide born and bred, lived in Melbourne for a while, lived in the UK for a while. How do you think Adelaide and South Australia is going at the moment?
I think if you can afford to live here, it's a great place to live. I actually, you know, I think we're going along well. My concern, as I think I alluded to, was we have too much of the public service subsidising everything here. And that has got to end sometime. It will end. And then the problem is if we don't have that base of manufacturing that we used to have, which a lot of it is gone, then it could be very difficult. But I do, as a place, you know, I've said to my kids, if you can somehow put your careers around to a path that you can end up back here, it is a great place to bring up children and have that. And I think, you know, you look at some of the family businesses around, you know, they're good friends and they do really well. And they bat well above their weight compared to the Eastern Seaboard. So, you know, it's there to be done. I just think, you know, we've become a little bit complacent because we haven't seen a recession for almost 30 years.
Well, we've had it pretty good.
Correct. And so I don't know what the next point is with it. I do worry about it, but the reality is, you know, hopefully we can dodge it as much as we can. But we do need to focus definitely more on less government and more back to business.
Perhaps a political pitch for Ben Lumbers.
There'll be no political pitch for Ben Lumbers, I can assure you of that.
Look, thanks for joining us. The Gliderol story is a fantastic story. Warwick Lumbers, clearly an entrepreneur prepared to take a risk in the 70s, develop a door that rolled, grew a business basically employing his mates and taking them out for lunch when things went well, expanded overseas and interstate, sold it, then you bought it back, sold it again, and now investing proceeds in South Australia and Australia. It's been great to talk to you, Ben. Really good to get the insights of someone who's actually done it for themselves, and well done.
Thanks, James.
And thanks for coming in for the chat.
No problem. Thanks.